So you're making Alfredo like on Instagram? All right, chapter 5. We tasted like salt, our mouths, our fingers. I darted my tongue across my cracked lips and fantasized about cherry chapstick and cotton candy flavored gloss. 2 days, we tasted like salt, our mouths, our fingers. I darted my tongue across my cracked lips and fantasized about cherry chapstick and no, I'm reading the book.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to me.
About cherry chapstick and cotton candy flavored gloss. 2 days lost, and I almost couldn't remember their taste anymore. We were no longer flesh and blood. We were dried sweat and salt water. Henry had sleepily rested her feet against mine. Even though everything was blazing hot, her feet were cold as always. I shook a little ocean water into Henry's coconut-scented sunscreen to make the bottle last longer and applied some to my peeling arms, trying to work up the will to break away and explore the jungle, look for water. Alex came trudging down the beach. Even he was sunburned now. He held the bottom of his shirt away from his body and bent low to the raft to let something tumble out. Red shiny orbs with deep grooves slid across the plastic. I jumped onto my knees with my stomach growling. What are they? Breakfast Jones cacao pods. Cacao as in chocolate. It felt light in my hand and smelled more like an orange or a flower than a candy bar. Don't get too excited. They don't taste much like chocolate, okay? They taste nothing like chocolate, but they're full of fat, so we'll get full. We wouldn't starve to death. That was our only consolation. Maybe we'd die of dehydration or typhoid fever, but we wouldn't starve. I needed to search for water. 3 days, that's all we had, but I didn't realize how bad the hours leading up to that point would feel. Henry picked up a cacao pod and held it out to Alex. Crack this for me, s'il vous plaît, she rasped. That's French for please. He thumped it against his knee, and I did the same. Mine burst into a dozen pieces like a broken pumpkin, but I could still eat the parts not covered in sand. We both popped the pieces of white flesh into our mouths. They were the texture of lima beans and bitter, but if I closed my eyes, they tasted like plums. I held mine out to Henry, but she gagged and dropped it into the sand. Tiny worms were twisting through the fruit. My stomach convulsed, and I pressed my hands into my abdomen. Alex went gray, and his shoulders heaved, but he swallowed it back down. He gave us a small, watery smile. It was just more protein. Henry inched away from the cacao pod. She dotted runny drops of sunscreen down her nose and across her cheeks, touching her fingers together as if she noticed the thinner consistency. I'd rather starve. While Alex popped another fleshy piece into the mouth. If we're here for much longer, you probably will. It's Henry, you half-wit. Hank is a nickname for Henry. He shrugged. It suits you. I kind of loved it that Alex made my name sexier and Henry's less sexy. My hunger winning out, I tore into my fruit, biting and sucking until what little juice there was slicked down my chin. If I didn't think about the worms, it was delicious. The pods weren't water, but they were enough to keep my throat from absolute misery, and at least hunger and thirst were a reminder I was still alive. Henry stood and slipped her shorts down her legs. She kicked towards Alex and strode. At least the hunger thirst reminded I was still alive. Henry stood and slipped her shorts down her legs. She kicked them toward Alex and strode toward the water. I'm going to get wet. He cupped his hands around his mouth and threw his voice down the beach. Don't drink any. Over her shoulder, she battered her eyelashes. Did you think I was talking about a swim? As Henry's body crashed against the surf, Alex moved beside him. There is something seriously wrong with her. No, she just was furious with me, but I didn't know she could carry it this far. Henry at home was bitter and hateful, slinging comebacks and slamming doors. But the tiniest catastrophe, like the Wi-Fi going down, would revive her enough to ask me for the network name and security key. Even if her civility didn't last beyond the time it took for the router to reboot, this lost version of Henry was relentless. She'll come around. Part of his sunburn flaked away as he scratched her cheek. What about you? Are you okay, Jones? Honestly? No, I want you to lie to me. He smiled. Yes, honestly. My whole body felt like it would burst into flames. My heartbeat was a drum in my chest. My temples pounded from dehydration, and it'd be only a matter of time before my mouth felt stuffed with cotton again. I'm okay. No, I mean really okay. This isn't only bad. This is, I know, good because I'm not sure I am. From the sand, he grabbed a beer can we'd found. Casey's brand, he told us, but Alex's hands trembled as he sliced off the top. Pieces of the boat had started to wash against our shores. We didn't know how to use everything we found, but we dragged it all back to the tree line anyway. What could have made the boat explode like that? I know I keep wondering too. Maybe a battery or a fuel leak. He picked up another can and cringed when the aluminum cut into his thumb. So you know you're right about water. What you said yesterday, we don't find it soon and we're done. We're not doing enough. We have to try harder. I had to try harder. Maybe there's water or help out there in the jungle. We'll use up all our energy doing that. It's a delicate balance. He sucked blood off his thumb and inspected the cut. Finding food and water burns calories, makes him sweat. But you just said we can't make it longer without water. At this point, it's do or. I thought about Casey just in time to stop myself. Alex sighed and used his pocket knife to split his sweatshirt up the back. You're right. If we're going, we go now. What are you doing? He wrapped and tied the two pieces of sweatshirt around his feet. They'll get shredded out there. It's the best idea I had. He finished tying them, a hint of a smile on his lips. What do you think? Good look for me? I paused putting on my shoes and looked him up and down, trying to smile too. You could start a trend. Drops of water darkened the white sand as Henry wrung her straight blonde hair between her hands. She stood over me, watching me put on my canvas shoes. Where are you going? Into the jungle to look for water. Henry grabbed her own shoes. No way in hell are you two leaving me alone here. The air was darker and denser under the tangles of branches. Each time I inhaled, the thickness caught in my lungs. My body didn't know whether to breathe or to drink it. With a piece of driftwood, Alex hacked through the vines and bamboo ahead. I stayed close to his back while Henry trailed behind. She didn't believe in breaking a sweat unless absolutely necessary. Maybe she finally understood what was at stake. We passed under trees with cinnamon-colored trunks. A spicy citrus breeze hit me. I looked up at the fruit, the cacao trees, as I paused to tie a piece of Alex's sweatshirt around a low branch. Markers we might need to find our way back. A vine twisted around the trunk as it dragged itself into a high branch. I realized, no, it was actually a snake. Henry would have lost it. So I didn't say anything, just rushed past. Alex, what do you think's out here? He kicked away the brush at his feet and pressed forward. We'll find out, he said, if we're stuck here long enough, suffocating. He pressed down as we cut right through the middle of the jungle. Maybe the temperature was truly unbearable, or maybe I was feverish from dehydration. I scanned the areas to the right and left of me as we moved. So many times I thought I saw a trickle of blue, but I'd blink and realize it was only my depression. Stings erupted on my bare legs, waves of them. All the island bugs seemed to live in the jungle, and now they were feasting on me. How far is it to the other side? Henry said, sounding bored. Alex whipped around. You think, Hank, it wouldn't have hurt my feelings in the slightest if you skipped this excursion? She took a sharp breath. Alex, you know that cliff down the beach. Why don't you jump off it? Stop it, I said, both of you. For miles and miles, we pushed on broken bodies over fallen trees, through thick patches of brush, and under draping tangles of growth. I ran out of sweatshirt to mark our way and improvised. By crossing straight vines across the path behind us, we walked until the ocean air. We masked by the scent of the musky earth. My tongue wasn't dry, it was sandpaper. We've been at it almost 2 hours, must have covered 3 miles. Alex had taken off his shirt, and the muscles and tendons on his back shook with each breath. If I wasn't such a stubborn bastard, I'd say we turned back. The dry ground crunched beneath my shoes, even though the trees were lush with thick, waxy leaves. Those trees could be surviving off the sheer humidity in the air and deep ground water. We're not going to find water, are we? The effects of dehydration were etched around Alex's eyes and in the small cracks of his full lips. I don't think so, Jones. We moved into a small clearing and Henry plopped down into the dry leaves beneath us. She looked fragile, sitting on the jungle floor, hugging her knees up under her chin. The situation, like so many in the months before, had spun out of my sister's control. And mine, she wasn't the only one to blame. The way she'd flirted with Casey, daring him to take us farther from land, had everything to do with the delight she took in watching me cringe. My hands ached. I wanted to reach out and touch her, but I knew better. Alex shrugged off Casey's backpack and lay flat on his back. My hands ached. I wanted to reach out and touch her, but I knew better. Alex shrugged off Casey's backpack and lay flat on his back. His hip bones jutted over the top of his long slung cargo shorts. So it's the struggle in the jungle. They're trying to find water. They ate some chocolate seeds or something, chocolate nuts or something. Not a spring, a brook, not even a puddle that had worms in it. I can't believe it. I sat beside them and closed my eyes. Minutes of hours later, it was hard to tell. The dim shadows of the jungle had darkened. Should we head back before it gets dark? Alex's knees cracked as he stood between the wreck and our dehydration. Our bodies had taken beatings. Give me a minute. I gotta pee. Given our worsening dehydration, I wondered how he still could. Did one of you touch this? Alex lifted Casey's backpack by the top handle. He pointed to a spindly tree at the edge of the clearing. I left it propped here. I just found it on its side. Did you touch it? Of course not. It probably just fell over. See, you gonna be ready to go at 4? Going to the boxing. Alex rubbed a hand down his face and focused his bloodshot eyes. Hello, Hank. Did you? Hey, yeah, I was so glad you left it alone so I could fondle all of your things. I've just been waiting for the opportunity. Whatever. He slipped the straps onto his shoulders and pushed through a cluster of trees. Stay together. If he felt half a stick or a tenth as weak as me, he could have collapsed at any minute, and I wouldn't have blamed him for abandoning my sister and me. We were poison to each other and everyone around us. Henry watched me staring to the spot where Alex vanished. If one of us dies, what should we do with the body? I looked away. Don't think like that, and if you don't say it. It's a legit question. Like, if Alex died, I don't know if we could carry him, and we don't have any tools to dig a grave. We'd have to let him rot. The first time I saw Alex, he glided his rickshaw down the gritty sidewalk separating the beach from the hotel swimming pool. Henry wore black sunglasses that covered half her face as we lounged in the shade of a poolside cabana. A security guard threw out his hand. Yo, buddy, this is private property. You can't drive that thing through here. Alex parked the rickshaw a few feet ahead of me. It's on the sand side now, buddy. Public beach. I think this is a flashback. The guard crossed his arms and muttered something about a permit. What do you think the boys are like here? Henry scrutinized a group of guys playing volleyball in the pool. Emma, tan. What? Her voice drifted, and I knew she noticed Alex's eyes green and rimmed with lashes that would give Henry's falsies a run for their money. He held the temple of the sunglasses in his mouth while he dug a piece of paper from his pocket. Our eyes met over the guard's shoulder, and he took the sunglasses from between his lips, and he smiled. His eyes crinkled at the corners in a way I liked. He didn't smile at Henry, who was right beside me in a bandeau top and string bottoms. He chose me wearing a t-shirt and cutoffs, and my hair in a messy ponytail. Henry swung her legs over the side of her lounge and rested her chin on my shoulder. Ooh, Emma likes what she sees. I think you should go talk to him. If you have the lady balls, you know I love it when the ballsy side of you comes out. My cheeks burned with the memory of that night, that party, that mistake. The security guard took off then on his Segway and left Alex to put away his license. Henry spread her calves with her coconut-scented sunscreen and rubbed it until they were evenly glossy. I really think you should go talk to him, Em. Fine, she would only have more ammunition against me if I didn't. Alex's attention drifted from the wallet in his hand and a corner of his mouth lifted as I walked up. Swallowed, I didn't know what to say. Nice bike. Well, thank you. He ran a hand along the shiny handles. She's all mine. He nodded to the dolphin screen printed on the front of my shirt. That is one wicked t-shirt. I was kitsy and touristy. I bought it in the gift shop our first day in Puerto Rico. Stop it. I mean it. He leaned on his shoulder bars and on his handlebars and gave me a wink. You want to go for a ride, or do you just enjoy breaking the hearts of lesser mortals? I pushed a loose curl behind my ear. A boy with a well-worn line. I should probably stay away from you. Well-worn? Fine. He leaned forward, more smiling. What's your sign? I laughed, and he said, seriously, have you seen much of the island? Gone snorkeling or sailing? Mostly just a resort and some stores. My sister and I shopped. Consumers excellent. He gave me a sweet, crooked grin. The more of you, the better. My sister did most of the shopping. I watched. He lifted his chin and looked past me. Is that your sister? Henry wore a smug smile under the awning. She thought I was going to screw up any minute. So Henry's getting some flirting going on with a guy on a motorcycle. I know how her mind worked. I nodded. By the way, she's looking at you. I'd say you're in desperate need of a getaway car. You're offering your services. His expression didn't change, but something did. This is another flashback, was amusement in his eyes. His mouth does that, or is the other part of flashback, does that mean you're saying yes? I climbed onto the rickshaw. We pedaled around the island for hours. I liked him because he talked and talked, yet talked about nothing. There was no pressure to be clever with Alex or be anything at all but myself. When he dropped me off at my hotel at sunset, we didn't know a thing about each other except for our names. His first name, my first and last. You're a first-class passenger, Jones. He removed his sunglasses and tapped them against his full bottom lip. You are up for an adventure tomorrow? All my boldness vanished, and I looked for any excuse. My sister, you're both invited. My cousin Casey, he's got this great boat. He's usually toting tourists around all day, but the boat's free tomorrow. You want to come by, have a beer or something? Memories of San Francisco with Henry flooded my mind before the chasm opened between us. Boys and bears and adventures that lasted until sunrise. In Alex's cousin's boat, maybe we could have a piece of that back. When and where? He penned some directions on the back of my hand as I turned toward the mile-high hotels nearly dusting the clouds. He cleared his throat. I'm going to need payment for the ride. I patted down my pockets. My wallet was in the backpack I left with Henry. A kiss will do? Ha, I said. He laughed, and I remembered the 10 I'd stuffed in my shorts pocket after buying the dolphin t-shirt the other day. Here, keep it. You were unexpected. No, really, you earned it. That was a lot of peddling. He folded the bill in half and tucked it away. Thank you. I hesitated, tugging the legs of my shorts down my thighs. Then I caught his chin quickly in my hand and kissed him on the cheek, feeling smooth skin and faint stubble, smelling sea, salt, sun warmth. Maybe it didn't make sense that I thought that I knew he could save our vacation, but attaching myself to Alex would prove something to Henry, make her proud of me for growing up, for being a girl like her. It wasn't fair to use, but at the same time, I didn't care. After all, I'd learned from the very best. Stay together, Henry mimicked after Alex had been gone for a few minutes. She got her to her feet and brushed off the seat of her shorts. I'm heading back. Where does he get off telling us what to do? Henry stopped. She shoved through the tangles of vines and holding onto a tree, contorted her body through the limbs. My sister wanted me to go after her. She wanted everyone to always want something from her that she'd never give. I stayed on the ground, keeping my arms crossed to stop me from pushing up from the dirt and following. Besides, Alex would be back soon, but she could get lost or hurt alone in the jungle. Seconds slipped by and Jesse's words came back to me. Henry always trying to destroy herself. At the place where she disappeared, I parted the vines. I twisted and ducked under branches. Henry, I yelled, Henry. Sun glowed through the next set of trees. The leaves were translucent as tissue paper. The air felt cooler, not as sticky, almost wet. Wet my hopes so high, I floated to the clouds. I stepped through. A narrow channel of water twisted through a small clearing. I panted, skidded down a shallow slope, and dropped to my knees in the soft brown mud. My fingers skimmed to the top of the water and sent ripples cascading, sulfur wafted up, and I gagged. Stagnant water wasn't drinkable. We'd give ourselves parasites or malaria or worse. But this water had held something else. Beneath the murky surface was the most unusual pattern of olive green and chocolate brown with the palest beige stripes. I reached into the water. Yellow eyes opened and glowed up at me. I shrieked. I pulled my hand back, jaws widened into a padded mouth studded with teeth. I jerked my foot away just as the jaw snapped shut, and in an instant the creature emerged from the mud. A flat-scaled tailed, the whole reptile emerged. Had to be as long as I was tall. An alligator. It barreled closer, and my hands flew out before I could think. Grabbing at roots, leaves, dirt, I clawed up the bank. It was faster than me. Wild creatures were supposed to be more afraid of us. I opened my mouth and screamed. It kept coming. My fingers locked on a thick, loose branch. The creature reared back with a low, crunching growl, like tires skidding on a gravel, and lunged forward, the weight of my body behind my swing. I knocked it across the face, gasping. I held the branch high, ready to strike again. It sank into the swamp, camouflage patterned tail and scaled hind legs, body with a green diamond spread across its back, long head, snout, and yellow eyes. It vanished, and I scrambled up the rest of the bank, crashing right into Henry. I threw my arms around her. Em, what happened? We heard you screaming. Alex tugged us apart and raked her, his eyes over me. Are you hurt? Pointing toward the water, I gasped out something. I don't even know. Henry backed farther up the embankment. What the hell was it? I don't know. An alligator. It was like 5 feet long. Came in. Alex's hand covered his mouth. They're not alligators, more like crocodiles, but smaller, more aggressive and agile. Casey knew a freshman who lost a hand to one last spring mating season. They said she had a nest closed. Ripples fanned over the swampy surface. Water's no good anyway, Alex said, stagnant. Can we catch a fucking break? He flicked the water off his hand and froze as he focused on me. You okay, Jones? We have to get out of here. I almost couldn't breathe. Now, right now. I darted past blurs of ferns and trees and swinging vines far ahead of Alex and Henry as I followed my markers all the way back toward the beach. The jungle pressed down on me with each step as I finally collapsed onto the raft. The weight of Alex's hand spread against my back. He didn't say anything, just sat quiet, watching the ocean. Wherever Henry had gone, she didn't come back to me. Here we go.